Hi everybody. Okay, we have moved to Act 1, Scene 3, and this is commonly played in a room in Polonius's house. Also, sometimes it's just a different room in the castle, but in productions. So let us begin. Now, you remember Polonius is the king's wingman, but he's also the father of Laertes and Ophelia. Okay, so enter Laertes and Ophelia, brother and sister. Now, as you may remember, Laertes is getting ready to go back to college, right? So he's packing. So, my necessaries are embarked, farewell. Means all his stuff is on the ship, ready to go. And sister, as the winds give benefit and convoy is assistant, do not sleep, but let me hear from you. So he's telling her that he wants letters, he wants to hear from her. And Ophelia's, do you doubt that? And Laertes switches the script on her. He goes, for Hamlet, and thy trifling of his favor. Hold it a fashioned and a toy in blood, a violet in the youth of primy nature, forward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting, the perfume and suppliance of a minute, no more. So Laertes evidently knows that Ophelia and Hamlet have been canoodling in secret. They have been meeting in secret. And Laertes is warning Ophelia. He's like, you know what? He may love you now, but it's not going to last. And Ophelia goes, no more, but so. She's like, oh, are you serious? What? Surely. And then Laertes goes, think it no more. For nature, crescent, does not grow alone, enthuse and bulk, but as this temple waxes, the inward service of the mind and soul grows wide withal. So basically, he's drawing an analogy to her relationship with Hamlet and just the natural progression of nature. Like the moon waxes and the moon wanes. The tides go in and the tides go out, much like Hamlet's love for her will be. It'll grow, but then it'll wane. So it's just part of nature for it to dwindle. And he continues, perhaps he loves you now, and now no soil nor cottle doth besmirch the virtue of his will. But you must fear, his greatness weighed, his will is not his own. For he himself is subject to his birth, he may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself. Now, basically, Laertes is finally like, okay, so say he does love you. The problem with it is that his greatness weighed. Hamlet is a prince, so he can't marry a commoner. So Laertes is kind of going a different route. He's like, okay, well, if you don't believe me that his love will not last forever, then let's try this route. You can't be with him. His position, his station is not going to allow it. So then he continues, the safety and health of this whole state, and therefore must his choice be circumscribed unto the voice and yielding of that body whereof he is the head. So basically what Laertes is saying here is that Hamlet's choice of marriage is almost chosen by the people. His choice must be subscribed unto the voice and yielding of the body of the people of Denmark, that he has to do what's best for the people, not necessarily what's best for him. And then he continues, then if he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it, as he in his particular act and place may give his saying deed. So Laertes even says, you know what, he may love you, but it doesn't matter. He has a higher calling. Then the main voice of Denmark, the higher calling, goes with all. Then weigh what loss your honor may sustain, if with too credent ear you list his song, or lose your heart, or your chaste treasure upon to his unmastered importunity. So here, Laertes is saying, you know what, Ophelia, you have to keep yourself safe and chaste. So you have to lock yourself physically away from Hamlet. You can't let him you can't. You just gotta say no. So he says, because once you lose your honor, especially in that particular time period, once a girl loses her honor, then she's basically, you know, she's unmarriageable. It's hard for her to find a good match. So, fear it, Ophelia, fear it, my dear sister, and keep you in the rear of your affection, out of the shot and danger of desire. The chariest maid is prodigal enough if she unmask her beauty to the moon. Virtue itself scopes not calumnious strokes. The canker galls the infants of the spring, too oft before their buttons be disclosed. And in the morn and liquid dew of youth, contagious blasphements are most imminent. Be weary then. Best safety lies in fear. Youth to itself rebels, though none else near. So basically he's telling her that she's young, that she's naive, and she may not make the best choices, that youth leads to being irrational. So he's telling her to be careful and to keep herself safe. And then Ophelia, she kind of agrees. She's like, okay, I shall the effect of this good lesson keep as watchman to my heart. So she's like, all right, Laertes, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I will be careful. But then she flips the script. She goes, but, good my brother, do not as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whilst like a puffed and reckless libertine, himself the primrose path of dalliance treads, and recks not his own reed. So she tells him, she's like, all right, so you're telling me to be careful, watch my heart, make sure I'm not out, you know, with lots of different people. She's like, what about you, Laertes? You need to be careful with yourself too, and you can't go out here acting a fool. And then Laertes goes, oh, fear me not. I stay too long, but here my father comes. So we see Polonius kind of scrambling around this side, and he's coming toward Laertes. And you can tell Laertes in a stage production is like, oh, Dad, crap. I was trying to get out of here before he saw me again, right? So enters Polonius, and Laertes looks at him and goes, oh, a double blessing is a double grace. Occasion smiles upon a second leave. So this means occasion smiles upon a second leave. Laertes has already told his father goodbye, but he didn't, scoot before Polonius saw him again. And then Polonius is slightly annoyed. He's like, yet here, Laertes, aboard, for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your cell, and you are stayed for. There, my blessing with thee. So then he blesses Laertes. He pops that hand on his head, and then he gives him a ton of advice, long-winded, never-ending advice. And this is what Laertes was trying to avoid, because we are learning that Polonius loves to hear himself talk. So, and some of this advice is actually, you've probably heard a few of these phrases before. So, Polonius begins, he's like, and these few precepts in thy memory look thou character. So watch your character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. So basically this is think before you speak. And then he says, be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. So, be friendly, but don't be, base or crude or those things. And then he says, those friends thou hast. So friends that you already have, and their adoption tried, which means you've gone through trials and tribulations and you know that they'll stand by your side. Grapple them into thy soul with hoops of steel. So keep your friends that you know really, really close. It's kind of like when you guys go off to college, the friends that you have in high school, you're really close BFFs, you'll keep those close because you know that they're your real friends. But then you go off to college and you'll meet new friends, but you know who your besties are. So you'll keep those guys closer. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched unfledged comrade. So unfledged comrade are new friends, friends that haven't been tested. Don't trust them too much. Wait until you know that they're truly loyal. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear that the opposed may beware of thee. So I like this because it's like, don't start none, but if it's on, get in there and finish it. So I like that. Give every man thine ear, but few thy voice. So listen. Do a lot more listening than speaking. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy, for the apparel oft proclaims the man. So, first of all, he's like, don't spend money you don't have, and he's like, and don't dress crazy. And then for the apparel, and they in France of the best rank and station are most select and generous chief in that. So he's like, the French are very fashionable, so you may want to copy their clothes. And then he goes, neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend. So I think maybe this is one that you've heard before, because if you borrow money or you lend money, you're apt to lose the friend that you did one of those transactions with. And then he continues, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry, and then this above all to thine own self be true. And it must follow as the night, the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Farewell, my blessing season, this and thee. So Polonius gives Laertes a lot of really good advice here. So even though Polonius is long-winded, even though as the play progresses, we're going to want to just like throat punch him, he really does love his children, and he does give some really good advice in this section. So Laertes is like, oh, thank goodness, most humbly do I take my leave, my lord. And Polonius, the time invites you, go, your servants tend. And then Laertes looks at his sister, farewell, Ophelia, and remember well what I have said to you. And then Ophelia's like, 'tis in my memory locked, and you yourself shall keep the key of it. Farewell, says Laertes, and he exits. The minute that Laertes exits, Polonius looks straight at Ophelia and goes, what is Ophelia he hath said to you? So he wants to know what the two of them were talking about. He's very nosy. And Ophelia goes, so please you, something touching the Lord Hamlet. And then Polonius, who is a know-it-all, has to go, very well, be thought. So he's basically like, that's what I thought. 'Tis told me he hath very oft of late given private time to you, and you yourself have of your audience been most free and bounteous. So Polonius like, yeah, I've heard you've been spending time with Hamlet, and you have been giving a lot of time to Hamlet. And then he continues, if it be so, as so 'tis put on me, and that in way of caution, I must tell you, you do not understand yourself so clearly as it behooves my daughter and your honor. What is it between you? Give me up the truth. So here he's basically telling her that she doesn't understand herself. She doesn't know if she really loves Hamlet or not, because she's too immature or naive or whatever, that she doesn't know herself well enough. But he wants her to tell her all the dirt. Like, I want to know everything that you two have been up to. So then Ophelia goes, he hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. And Polonius gets ill. He's like, affection? Pooh! You speak like a green girl. And a green girl, of course, is naive, young, unsifted in such perilous circumstances. So you are in things that you don't understand. These are unsifted. These things haven't happened to you before. You don't understand the situation. And then he goes, do you believe his tenders, as you call them? So he's actually, do you believe he truly loves you? And Ophelia goes, I don't know, my lord. What should I think? What I should think. Now, here we learn a little bit about Ophelia. First of all, she buckles with Laertes, and she's like, I shall do as you command. You know, and she doesn't fight for it. She's not like, Hamlet's my man, you back off, I'll do what I want. You know, she doesn't do that at all. She seems to be quite submissive, and she does this again with Polonius when he says, do you believe his tenders? And instead of going, yes, I believe he loves me, she goes, I don't know, should I? So we have a very interesting character profile with Ophelia, that she doesn't seem to be very assertive. So let's continue. Polonius, marry, I'll teach you. So she says, I don't know what to think. And he goes, I'll tell you what to think. I will teach you what to think. And he goes, think yourself a baby, that you have ta'en these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. So when he says that you have taken this love for true pay, that means like real coins, And when he says which are not sterling, that means that she took them like they were real money, but they're actually fake. They're fake money. And he says, tender yourself more dearly. So he's basically, when he says tender, he means you're worth more. Count yourself as more valuable than fake coins. Or not to crack the wind of the poor phrase, wronging it thus, you'll tender me a fool. So he's like, if you don't count yourself as precious as real coins, and you continue to give Hamlet your time and your favors, as it will, you will tender me a fool. Tender me a fool was a term for making, it would make Polonius a grandfather, like an illegitimate child. Like, it will tender me a fool, you will give him a fool, which was also another name for a child born out of wedlock. So when he says, or not crack the wind of the poor phrase, that's like saying something that's kind of crass and base. But he says that to her. And then Ophelia is like taken aback by this. She's like, oh, that's not what our love is about. She's like, my lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion. So she's like, he hasn't tried to be, grabby. He's honestly said that he loves me in honorable fashion. He's never tried to be, And Polonius goes, aye, fashion may you call it. Go to. So basically, he's like, tell me more about this. Tell me how he's honorable to you. And Ophelia goes, and hath give countenance to his speech, my lord, with almost all the holy vows of heaven. When she says holy vows of heaven, she's basically saying he has basically said wedding vows to me. And Polonius freaks out. He goes, aye, spridges to catch woodcocks. Woodcocks are tiny little birds, and basically when he says spridges to catch woodcocks, he's like, he's set a trap. So by saying those vows, he set a little trap for a stupid little woodcock bird, which I guess would be Ophelia. And it continues, I do know when the blood burns, how prodigal the son lends the tongue vows. So he's talking about Hamlet and being young and, what Hamlet is probably after. And he says, I understand when the blood burns, the things that you will say to people to get what you want. And that's what he's telling her. And he goes, these blazes, daughter, giving more light than heat. So he may say these things and they sound beautiful, but there is no truth in them. That's what he's saying, more light than heat. And he goes, extinct in both, even in their promise, as it is a making, you must not take for fire. From this time, and then he's going to lay down the laws. He's like, all right, I hear what you're saying. I'm not having it. Hamlet's only after, that. And from this time on, be something scanter of your maiden present. So he's like, keep yourself away from him. Stay away from him. Don't be around him. Don't allow him your presence. And he goes, set your entreatments at a higher rate than a command to parley. So even though he calls, set your entreatments at a higher. Just because he says, Ophelia, doesn't mean that you come a-running. Set yourself higher. For Lord Hamlet believes so much in him. So this is what you can believe, that he is young, and with a larger tether may he walk, that may be given you. I love that line, because basically he's telling her, he's like, Hamlet, as a man, as a prince, he has a longer leash than you do. He can get away with more things. If Ophelia and Hamlet have a sexual relationship, Hamlet's going to be just fine. But Ophelia's tether, her line, if her and Hamlet have a sexual relationship, she's on a choke collar. She's not going anywhere. Her life is basically ruined. So Polonius is pointing out that Hamlet has a larger tether than Ophelia, both because of station, both because of her gender, and for these, he's drawing that comparison. And he goes, do not believe his vows, for they are brokers, not of that dye which their investments show, but mere implorators of unholy suits, breathing like sanctified and pious bawds the better to beguile. So he's like, he's lying. He's full of lies to get what he wants. This is for all. I would not in plain terms from this time forth have you so slander any moment leisure as to give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. Look to't, I charge you, come your ways. So Ophelia's not allowed to see Hamlet anymore. And Ophelia doesn't put up a fight. She just goes, I shall obey my lord. And that's it. She doesn't fight. She doesn't stomp her little foot. She doesn't try to rush off to her room. She's like, I don't love you anymore. I love Hamlet. Hamlet is all I need in the world. She doesn't do that. She's just like, I shall obey my lord. And there are a lot of reasons for that you can explore. It could be the time period. It could be the fact that maybe Ophelia is just not an assertive, aggressive woman. It could be the fact that she is, I don't know, there could be a million explanations for why Ophelia just sort of gives up the fight so quickly. It's just like, I shall obey. Same thing she does with Laertes. But it's kind of interesting, something to think about. So that is Act 1, Scene 3 at Polonius's house. So I guess we will meet again for Act 1, Scene 4 on the platform. All right, bye.